どうも、勝手に電力2.0で始めたいと思います。今日1290回目というところで、この CDM の中でこのスモールスケールメソロジーってあるので、このあたり少し見ていこうかなと思っていますと。でまずはこの AMS3C のですね、そのところで Emission Reduction by Electric and Hybrid Vehicle ってことで、EV みたいなところのメソッドがありますと。で、Typical Project ということで、Operation and or Charging or Electric and Hybrid Vehicle for providing passengers and or Flight Transportation Services Type of GHG Emissions Mitigation Action ということで、Fuel Switch、ガソリンから、この、ね、化石燃料から Displacement of More GHG Intensive Vehicle、これ GHG というところはより、脱炭素につながるところのビークルに変えると。Important condition under the which the methodology is applicable 何を適用するか Project and Baseline Vehicles should belong to the same vehicle category まずは同じ大きさのカテゴリーと。The vehicles under the category have comparable passengers load capacity and power rating with variation of no more than 20%. The prevailing regulations pertaining to battery use and disposal shall be compiled with procedure for avoiding double count or emissions reduction should be documented in the PDD. PDD でそのダブルカウントを防ぐようにちゃんと書くと。Important parameter at validation, if applicable, grid emission factor can also be mentioned export and monitor number of electronic hybrid vehicles operated under the project. Quality of fossil fuel use, example for hybrid vehicle and electricity consumption for all electronic and hybrid vehicles to determine specific electricity fossil fuel consumption per kilometer. Annual average distance driven by project vehicles, electricity consumed by the project vehicle というパラメータが出てくると。で、実際のこのベースランシナリオどうなっているかというと、これ見てもらったからね、フォッシルフューエルっていうのを使ってカーを走らせて二酸化炭素が出てくると。なので、operation of more GHG emitting vehicles for providing passengers and or freight transportation services で、プロジェクトシナリオは電気自動車に書いてある。例えばエレクトリシティがカーで走らせるので、これに対して CO2 それに対してもう一つアップグレードというところで、実際これ変えていくということですね。Operation of less GHG emitting vehicles with electronic hydro engine for providing passengers and or freight transportation services ということで、このスモールスケールメソロジー、emission reduction by electronic and hydro vehicle 出てくると。で、introduction。The following table describes the key element of the methodology. まず key element ですね。Methodology key elements, typical project. 通常のものは Operation of electronic and hydro vehicle for providing transportation service. 実際に、even 変えていくと type of GHG emissions and mitigation action. この fuel switch and then the displacement of more GHG intensive vehicles. And the scope and applicability and entry into force. Scope ですね、まずは。This methodology applies to project activities introducing new electronic and or hybrid vehicle that displace the use of fossil fuel vehicles in the passenger and freight transportation. The applicable 適用ですね。The methodology is not applicable for project activities that involve the switch from fossil fuel to biofuel. だからバイオフューエルのトランスポーテーションっていうのは範囲に入ってませんよと。Those project activities shall consider using another type 3 methodology. それは別のタイプだよと。この AMS3T ですね。Planned oil production and use for transportation applications, and AMS3AK biodiesel production and use for transport applications. In case where the project vehicle used and a replaceable changeable battery, there must be a documented measures in place to ensure that vehicle owners have access to replacement batteries of comparable quality. 実際にバッテリーを変えれるとですね。The project design document, PDD, shall explain the proposed approach for introducing distributing the electronic hybrid vehicles, which shall allow for tracking of the project vehicle. It shall also explain how the proposed project activity will A. Demonstrate that the baseline vehicle being displaced are those consuming fossil fuels. This can be done. For example, though documentation of the market share per fuel type per vehicle category in the project reason, example based on representative sample survey or of official data or peer review literature. B. Ensure compliance with prevailing regulations pertaining to battery use and disposal. 6. The PDD shall include minimum performance specifications for the batteries to be used, such as depth of discharge, battery cycles, distance traveled per charge lifetime. 7. The project proponents shall demonstrate that double count of emission reduction will be not occurred. Example, via or a contractual agreement with the end user's maintenance of comprehensive inventory of project vehicles or a unique identification of the vehicle owned by end users. The steps undertaken to avoid double counting shall be documented in the PDD 8. In case where renewable energy source is used for charging the electronic vehicle through a dedicated transmission distribution line, the methodology should be combined with AMS1F, renewable electricity generation for captive use and mini-grid, to claim emission reductions for the amount of electricity supplied from renewable electricity source to the changing station. In cases where this methodology is combined with AMS1F, renewable electricity generation for captive use and mini-grid, the project proponent shall separately demonstrate the additionality of each of the components. Example, supply of renewable energy to charging state type 1 and use of electronic vehicle type 3. Furthermore, while combining the two components, applicable requirements on start date and clear clean development mechanism CDM consideration shall be met in accordance with the CDM project standard and CDM project cycle procedure. 10. Types of hybrid electronic vehicle to be introduced include but are not limited to cars, buses, trucks, jeepneys, commuter vans, taxis, motorcycles, and tricycles. 11. Project participants shall demonstrate that the project and baseline vehicles are comparable using the following meanings. A. Project and baseline vehicles belong to the same vehicle category. Example, motorcycle, bus, taxi, trucks, tricycle. B. Project and baseline vehicle categories have comparable passenger load capacity and power rating with a variation of no more than 20% comparing the baseline vehicle with the respective project vehicle of same category. 12. Measures are limited to those that result in emission reductions of less than or equal to 60 kiloton CO2 equivalent annually. Entry into force. The date of entry into force is the date of the publication of the EB 115 meeting report on 8 September 2020. 2020年、22年9月8日ですね。Applicability of sectoral scopes for validation and verification of CDM project and program activities by the design operational entity DOE using this methodology application of sectoral scope 7 is mandatory. Normative references 15. Project participants shall apply the general guideline to SSC CDM methodologies and information on additionality. Attachment A, Appendix B. B, provided at mutatis. 16. This methodology also refers to the latest approved version of the following tool and methodology. A, AMS-ID 1D, Grid Connect Renewable Electricity Generation. B, MSIF, Renewable Electricity Generation for Captive Use and Mini-Grid. Hereinafter referred to as AMSIF. C, AMS3T, plant oil production and use for transportation application. D, AMS3AK, biodiesel production and use for transportation applications. E, guideline sampling and survey for CDM project activities and program of activities. F, Tool 21, demonstration of additionality of small-scale project activities, hereinafter referred to as Tool 21. G, Tool 5, baseline project and or linkage emissions from electricity consumption and monitoring of electricity generation, hereinafter referred to as Tool 5. Definitions. The definitions contained in the glossary of CDM terms shall apply. 18. For the purpose of this methodology, following definitions apply. A hybrid vehicle is a vehicle which combines an internal combustion engine and one or more electric motors. Baseline methodology, project boundary. The project boundary is comprised of A, the vehicle of the project, B, the geographic boundaries where the project activity vehicles are operated, C, the provider of the charging services to the project activity vehicles, including the charging equipment and stations of the project activities vehicle. Electronic supply sources, example, are grid and or renewable energy generation source connected by the dedicated line to the charging stations and other ancillary facilities. Additionality. For the specific case of this methodology, additionality is demonstrated using one of the options below, option 1, demonstrating that the project activities would otherwise not be implemented due to the existence of one or more barrier listed in Tool 21. The barrier can be demonstrated for buyers, users, and or charging service providers of the electronic vehicles, even if the manufacturer or retailer of the electronic vehicle is implementing the project. Option 2, demonstrate example that the market penetration of project electronic hybrid vehicles is equal to or smaller than 2.5% of the annual sales of the vehicle of the same category. Example, if project vehicles are electronic scooters, market penetration of electronic two-wheelers is equal to or smaller than 2.5% of all motorized two-wheelers, irrespective of the manufacturer in the region. To determine the market penetration, the most recent 3 years data available at the time of submission of the CDM PDD or CDM CPADD for validation inclusion shall be used. This period is considered necessary to capture variation of the sales data from year to year. Exceptionally, historical sales data covering less than 3 years, but a minimum of 1 year may be used with due justification. Example demonstrated an availability of data despite the effort made. Non-binding, best practice example. Project technology, battery electronic vehicle, BEVs. Market penetration is determined as a percentage of BEVs in the target market size based on sale data in the applicable geographical area. The table below illustrates the market penetration of passenger cars by fuel types in the country X in 2019, 2020, and 2021. In this example, the target market size is considered as private four-wheelers only for household use. Table. New passenger car sales by fuel type in country X in 2019, 2020, and 2021 in percentage. これ見ると、実際2019、2020ということで、ペトロールとディーゼルと BEV でどのぐらいの差があるかということで、アベレージ、3年間見ると62.7がペトロールで、ディーゼルが29、で、BEV が8.3。As shown in the table above, the market penetration of BEV based on the most recent 3 years sales data from 2019-2021 was 8.3%. Therefore, based on the most recent 3 years sales data, it can be considered that BEVs have a market penetration of more than 2.4% and is not automatically additional. Baseline. The baseline scenario in case of operation of electric vehicle is the operation of the comparable vehicles. The comparability of baseline and project vehicle to be demonstrated as per indicator in paragraph 11 above. That would have been used to provide the same transportation service. 24 FM, combining this methodology with AMS 1F, the baseline for the supply of electricity from electricity source shall be determined as per AMS 1F. Baseline emissions. And the baseline emissions on account of supply of electricity to the charging stations from a dedicated renewable energy source shall be estimated as per AMS 1F. Baseline emissions should be calculated using one of the two approaches described below. Approach 1. Using distance traveled by project vehicles. The baseline emissions are calculated based on the unit of service provided by the project vehicle, traveled distance times the emission factor for the baseline vehicle to provide the same unit of services as per the equation below. で、まずはこの中で B ですね、Total Baseline Emission in Year、トータルの、実際のエミッション、排出量がどうなって計算するかで EF ということで、Emission Factor for Baseline Vehicle Category でグラム CO2、1キロあたりの CO2 がどのくらい出るかというところの、すべての足し算という、和っていうところですね。で、DD っていうのが Annual Average Distance Traveled by Project Vehicle Category っていうことで何キロ走ったか、まさに CO2 出すためには、この1キロあたりの CO2 が出ているので、これにキロメートルをかけていくと。で、N ですね。Number of Operational Project Vehicle in Category ということで、台数を後をかけていくと。で、29 Approach to using the electricity used to charge the vehicles. The baseline emissions are calculated as per the equation below by transforming the electricity charge to the vehicles at the charging station point in the traveled distance and the emission factor for fossil fuel used by the baseline vehicles to travel the same distance ということで、次が BE ですね。The total baseline emission、ベースラインをどう計算するかっていうところで、EF 先ほど言ったようにキロメートルにあたりの CO2 っていうところを出しつつも、この EC ですね。The electricity consumed for the charging project vehicle category at the charging station point in 1 year、何キロワットアワーだったのかに対して EF が emission factor for baseline vehicle category でグラムパーキロメートルっていうことをですね、これに SEC っていうところは割り算。specific electricity consumption per kilometer per project vehicle category year っていうことで、実際にキロワットからキロワット分のキロメートルってことで、これ逆になるので、実際にキロメートルが出てくる。何キロメートル走ったかっていうのがこの式で出てくるから、実際にこの1キロあたりの CO2 にキロメートルをかけてっていうことで出てくると。The emission factor for baseline vehicle category EF、これですね、EF。CO2、単位あたりの CO2 ですね、1キロあたりの。shall be determined as follows ということで、これ実際単位あたりどう決まるかっていうね、SFC's specific fuel consumption of baseline vehicle category。まずは1キロメートルあたり何グラム出るかっていうところですね。それと NCV っていうのが net calorific value of fossil fuel consumed by baseline vehicle category ということで、ジュール、グラムあたりのジュールっていうので、しっかりキログラムあたりにジュールっていうのが出てくると。で、その下ですね、EM。emission factor of fossil fuel category ということで、ジュールあたりの CO2 で出てくると、熱量で。IR っていうのは technology improvement rate is approved for the technology category in its 0.99。で、T っていうのはyear counter for the arrange data per vehicle category ですね。というところで、この technology improvement factor for baseline vehicle in year T。The improvement rate is applied to each calendar year. The default value of technology improvement factor for the all baseline vehicle category is 0.99 T. Year counter for the annual improvement dependent on the age of data per vehicle category. The specific fuel consumption of baseline vehicle category SFCs shall be determined using one of the following options. Option 1, sample measurement. Measure the actual fuel consumption rate of the representative sample of vehicles for each vehicle category identified for highway driving. Vehicle categories shall be determined conservatively, 保守的に見だってね, and be based on the fuel type used, the vehicle category, engine model year, power rating, passengers, load capacity, auxiliary equipment, example with and without air conditioners, and other relevant factors to distinguish vehicles with different fuel consumption rates. Sample vehicles shall be randomly chosen in accordance with the latest version of the guideline for sampling and survey for CDM project activities and program of activities, using a 90% confidence interval and plus minus 10% precision to determine the sample size. まさにこの 90% の信頼範囲ってことですね。The lower bound of 95% confidence interval shall be used as the specific fuel consumption. The option 2, top 20% of the comparable vehicle used for public-private transportation. 34, the specific fuel consumption for comparable vehicle is estimated by using the specific fuel consumption for highway driving obtained from manufacturer's specification of the top 20% of vehicles operated used for public-private transportation in the project region. Option 3, using operational data of the vehicles and the baseline operational conditions. When the specific baseline vehicles can be identified, that is a vehicle used in the same area and with similar operating conditions, and this vehicle will not be replaced over the life of the project. The following options apply. A. Specific fuel consumption (SFC) is determined from the average operational data of the vehicles and the baseline operating conditions, using at least 1 year of operational data if that data is available. Otherwise, B. SFCs should be obtained from manufacturer's specification if it can be demonstrated that the value is conservative given the operating conditions of the baseline vehicle. Example, values for specific fuel consumption under standard testing conditions provided by manufacturers. This may be the case when the project activities introduce new vehicles and the baseline vehicle is also new and provide a similar service. In project activities where baseline vehicles include non-standard vehicles such as jeepneys or tricycles, which are assembled locally and for which manufacturer's data is not available. The specific fuel consumption may be determined using one of the following two options. A. Measure the actual fuel consumption and corresponding distance traveled of the sample of baseline vehicles operating in comparable traffic situations with a similar age or newer, similar or smaller engine size, similar or lower passenger goods load capacity, and a similar weight or lighter, and other relevant factors to distinguish vehicles with different fuel consumption rates. Samples vehicles shall be randomly chosen in accordance with the latest version of the guideline for sampling and survey for CDM project activities and program of activities using 90% confidence interval and 10% precision to determine the sample size. The lower bound of 95% confidence interval shall be used as a specific fuel consumption. B. Use a specific fuel consumption value from peer-reviewed literature source or report authored by the nationality internationally recognized independent third party or research institute under the following two conditions to ensure conservative value. 1. The specific fuel consumption value was derived from measurements taken under highway driving conditions or similar non-urban traffic conditions. 2. The specific fuel consumption value for baseline vehicles was derived with characteristics leading to similar or lower emissions as compared to the baseline vehicles. For example, use specific fuel consumption values for vehicles of the similar age or newer as similar or smaller engine size as similar or lower passenger goods load capacity and similar weight or lighter and other relevant factors to distinguish vehicles with different fuel consumption rates. Option 4. Using data from the control group of vehicles. If no specific baseline vehicle can be identified or appropriate operational data is not available, then specific fuel consumption should be obtained through the statistically significant control group or existing statistics that are regularly updated. Such a control group on or the source of data must shall have similar or conservative characteristics with respect to vehicle age, equal or newer, traffic conditions equal or better. But air conditioning, the choice of such control group will be in order of preference. A. Fleet of the same company operating simultaneously with the project activity. B. Fleet of company with similar operations operating simultaneously with the project activity. C. Host country statistics. B. D. IPCC or other international data. Under this option, specific fuel consumption is monitored throughout the project crediting period. Thus, gradual efficiency improvement or the fleet or gradual deterioration of driving conditions would automatically be incorporated in the project efficiency levels. Option 5, existing statistics. If none of the above options apply due to lack of data, or other public available existing statistics could be used as industry default values, such as host country statistics released by Transportation Department or other authorities, IPCC or other international data. Project emissions ですね。Project emissions include the electricity and fossil fuel consumption associated with the operation of project vehicle and shall be calculated as follows. Approach 1. Using distance traveled by project vehicle. まず P ですね。Total project emission。CO2 がどのくらいどう計算するか。EF。Emission factor per kilometer traveled by the project vehicle type で CO2。まず1キロあたりの CO2 っていうのが出てきて、これにキロメートル。Number of operational project vehicle in category でキロメートルか。DD annual average distance traveled by the project vehicle category でキロメートルをかけていって、ナンバーでやっていくと。The approach 2. Using the electricity used by a charged vehicle ってことで、この P ってどう計算するかというと、この EF の今までの CO2 単位あたりの CO2 に対して EC。Electricity consumed by the project vehicle of the type ということで、キロワットアワーを実際1キロメートルの何キロワットアワー、SEC ですね。Specific electricity consumption by project vehicle category per kilometer in a year in urban condition, vehicle types of project activities ということでやると。The emission factor of the project vehicle shall be established as follows ということで実際排出量がこの SEC specific electricity consumption by project vehicle category per kilometer in a year in urban で1キロメートルあたり何キロワットアワーを使っていくのかというところと、実際 EF っていうのがこの CO2 emission factor of electricity consumed by project vehicle category ということで、これは1キロワットあたり CO2 がどのくらいですか、電気のCO2 の出す単位量ですね。で、SFC っていうところが実際これと出したけど、specific fossil fuel consumption by project vehicle category kilometer in urban year これグラムキロメートルだと何グラム出てき、フォッシルフュエルが出てくるか、使うか。で、EF っていうのが実際 CO2 emission factor of fossil fuel consumed by project vehicle category です。ジュールあたりの CO2 と。NCV っていうのが net calorific value of the fossil fuel consumed by project vehicle category でグラムあたりのジュール熱量っていうのが出てくると。これかけていく CO2 出すための一連の作業ですね。TDR っていうのが、この実際に average technical transmission and distribution losses for providing electricity in a year ってことになると。で、リーケージですね。Non-leakage calculation is required. リーケージの計算いらないと。Emission reduction. Emission reduction are calculated as follows ってことで、実際 emission reduction っていうのが CO2 量が実際にベースラインのエミッションから、このプロジェクトエミッションを引く、それにリンケージエミッションを引いていく、漏れたものを引いていくことで、で、モニタリングメソロジーってことで、relevant parameters shall be monitored and recorded during the crediting period as indicated in the section below. The applicable requirements specified in the general guideline for SSC CDM methodologies are also in the integral part of the monitoring guideline specific below and therefore shall be followed by the project participants. で、パラメーターがどういうふうにやっていくか、この DD っていうのは何かキロメートルですよと。で、description, annual average distance driven by project vehicle in a year ということで、1年あたりどのくらいキロメートル走っていくか、source of data が measurement。measurement procedure 手続きはどうするか、どうやって測るか、measure the annual average distance driven by the project vehicle through option A が monitoring of all vehicles すべてを測っていくか、オプション B が representative サンプルを取るかですね、survey of vehicle for each vehicle category。Sample vehicle shall be chosen in accordance with the latest version of the guideline for sampling and survey for CDM project activities and program of activities using 90% confidence interval and plus minus 10% precision to determine the sample size. The lower bound of 95% confidence interval shall be used as the annual distance traveled ということでね。で、パラメータの2っていうのは TDL 何かというと、ユニット percentage。この実際単位が percentage。description。Average technical transmission and distribution losses for providing electricity in a year。この、実際に何パーセント っていうところが、ロスがあるかっていうところですね。この as per the procedure of tool 5。この tool 5で分かってくると。で、パラメータ7 sex っていうので、1キロあたりのキロワットアワーがどのくらいかということですね。Specific electricity consumption per kilometer per project vehicles category in a year Y. Measurement。今度はメジャーメントどうやって測るか。Measure the specific electricity consumption through option A は、まずはもうモニターする。Monitor electricity consumption of all project vehicles or option measure the amount of electricity consumed per kilometer traveled for the represent a sample of each vehicle category. Sample vehicles shall be chosen in accordance with the latest version of the guideline for sampling and survey for CDM project activities and program of activities using a 90% confidence interval and plus minus 10% precision to determine the sample size. The upper bound of 95% confidence interval shall be used for the specific fuel electricity consumed, cross-checked against vehicle's specification kilowatt hour per kilometer. For urban conditions provided by the manufacturer and use the highest of the two values ですね。であとはメジャーメントが例えばいろいろ出てくるっていうところであって出てきますというので、やってます。こんなような感じですね。実はメソロジーと CDM っていうところで世界的にはいろいろ決まっていったりするので、こういうのをどうやって応用していくかっていうのを考えるというふうになるのかな